The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft golden hue across the small, cozy apartment. Emma stirred awake as the familiar sound of her alarm buzzed on the bedside table. She groaned lightly, reaching out to silence it, and glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. It was the same routine every day, yet somehow mornings always felt like a race against time. "Kira, sweetheart," she called gently as she shuffled out of bed, tying her hair into a messy ponytail. She peeked into her daughter's room where the 5-year-old lay sprawled across her bed, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. "Time to wake up, my little sunflower," Emma whispered, planting a kiss on Kira's cheek. Kira groaned and pulled the covers over her head. "Just 5 more minutes, Mommy, please," she mumbled, her voice muffled by the blanket. Emma chuckled. 5 minutes? You said that yesterday and we almost missed the bus, remember? She gently tugged the blanket away, revealing Kira's sleepy, pouty face. "Come on, if we're late again, the bus driver might start charging us a late fee." Kira giggled at the joke, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but brightening as she stretched her small arms toward her mom. "Carry me, Mommy." Emma scooped her up with a playful sigh. "You're getting heavier, you know that? Pretty soon I'll need a crane to lift you." "I'm not heavy," Kira protested, laughing as Emma carried her to the small bathroom. All right, Emma relented, setting her down gently. "Now, brush those teeth, Missy. We don't want Mr. Toothpaste Monster coming back, do we?" Kira giggled again and obediently picked up her toothbrush. Emma gave her a quick wink before hurrying to the kitchen. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as Emma moved about, juggling her morning tasks. She poured cereal into a bowl for Kira, packed her own lunch, and checked her work emails on her phone, all while keeping an ear out for her daughter's cheerful humming from the bathroom. As she was buttering toast, her parents called. Emma answered on speakerphone, balancing the phone on the counter while scrambling to pack Kira's school bag. "Emma, are you sure you don't want us to take Kira for a while?" Her mom's warm voice came through. "You sound like you're juggling a circus over there." Emma smiled, though a pang of guilt tugged at her. "Mom, I appreciate it really, but I've got this. We're managing just fine." Her father's gruff but kind voice chimed in. "Sweetheart, there's no shame in accepting help. You're working so hard and we know it's not easy being on your own." Emma sighed, glancing toward Kira, who was now sitting at the table, happily munching on her cereal. "I know, Dad, I do. But Kira's my world. I can't imagine being apart from her, even for a little while. We're a team, right, Kira?" Kira looked up, milk dribbling down her chin. "Team Mommy and Kira," she cheered, raising her spoon like a flag. Her parents laughed on the other end. All right, her mom said, her tone softening. "But if you ever change your mind, you know we're just a call away." "I know," Emma replied, her voice tinged with gratitude. "Thank you, really. But I've got to do this on my own, for both of us." After hanging up, Emma crouched beside Kira and wiped her chin with a napkin. "You're my little cheerleader, you know that?" Kira grinned and wrapped her small arms around Emma's neck. "And you're my superhero, Mommy." Emma's heart swelled as she hugged her daughter tightly. "Okay, let's hustle," Emma said, standing up and clapping her hands. "We've got 20 minutes to get out the door. Shoes, jacket, backpack. Go, go, go." Kira giggled as she scrambled to grab her things, her little feet stomping excitedly around the apartment. Emma quickly slipped on her heels, grabbed her purse, and made sure the coffee pot was off. She paused briefly to look at a framed picture on the counter, just her and Kira on a park bench, Kira beaming while Emma held her close. "All right, team," she said, as she grabbed the door handle, glancing down at her daughter. "Ready to conquer the day?" "Ready," Kira said, with a confident nod. As they stepped out into the crisp morning air, Emma felt a familiar sense of determination rise within her. No matter how hectic life got, she knew she could handle it, because for Kira, she would move mountains. After giving Kira a goodbye kiss before the standing bus and see her go, Emma couldn't help but realize how far they've come. 6 years ago one night, the house was too quiet, the kind of silence that made Emma feel uneasy. She sat on the edge of the couch in the living room, her hands gripping the hem of her sweater as she stared at the clock on the wall. It was nearly midnight and Charles still wasn't home. Lately, it felt like every time they were supposed to talk, he found a reason to stay away a little longer. Meetings, late dinners, anything to avoid being here, she thought bitterly. When she heard the sound of the car pulling into the driveway, her heart raced. She stood up quickly, brushing her hands against her sides, trying to steady herself. The front door opened, and there he was, stepping inside and loosening his tie. He looked tired, but it was the kind of tired required that had nothing to do with work. "You're late," Emma said, her voice soft but carrying a hint of frustration. Charles sighed, shutting the door behind him. He set his briefcase down and glanced at her briefly before looking away. "I know," he said. "I got caught up." "You've been getting caught up a lot lately," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We said we'd talk tonight, Charles. About us. About everything." He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "Emma, I don't think tonight's a good time." She felt her chest tighten. "If not tonight, then when? You keep pushing this off. I need to know where we stand, Charles." He avoided her gaze, walking past her to the kitchen. Emma followed, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. "Don't walk away from me," she said, her voice breaking just slightly. He stopped, his back to her, his shoulders stiff. "Emma," he began, his tone heavy, "this isn't easy for me." "Oh, don't," she said, her frustration boiling over. "Don't make it sound like you're the one suffering here. Do you think this is easy for me? Knowing that we're drifting further apart every day and not knowing why?" Charles turned to face her, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place. Regret, guilt, maybe even shame. "It's not just us, Emma. It's my family, my mother." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "Your mother," she repeated. "Of course. It's always about what your mother thinks, isn't it?" "She thinks this isn't working," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She thinks it's time to move on." Emma stared at him, disbelief washing over her. "Move on?" she repeated. "What does that even mean, Charles? We're married. This isn't something you just move on from." "She doesn't think," he paused, struggling to find the words. "She doesn't think we can have a future, not without children." Emma felt the air leave her lungs. Her stomach sank as the words settled over her. "So that's it," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm barren, and that makes me unworthy. Is that what she told you?" Charles opened his mouth to argue, but closed it again, his silence speaking louder than any words could. Emma took a step back, shaking her head. "And you agree with her," she said, her voice breaking. "You think I'm not good enough for you because I can't give you a child." "It's not like that," he said quickly, taking a step toward her. "Emma, it's not you. You know that. But my mother, she's worried about the family. The name, she doesn't understand." Emma's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Oh, she understands just fine. She's the one pulling the strings, Charles, and you're letting her. You're letting her decide what our marriage is worth." "I don't have a choice," he snapped, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. "You don't have a choice?" she repeated. "What about me? What about the vows we made? What about the love we're supposed to have?" Charles looked at her, his expression a mix of frustration and sadness. "Emma," he said softly, "it's been 3 years of trying and nothing. My mother, she won't let this go. And if I don't do this, she'll make life unbearable for both of us." Emma stared at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're really doing this," she whispered. "You're choosing her over me." He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry," he said. She stood there for a moment, letting his words sink in. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the kitchen. She climbed the stairs to their bedroom, her movements robotic, her mind racing. She packed a small suitcase, her hands shaking as she folded her clothes. When she came back down, Charles was still standing in the kitchen, staring at the floor. "I'll leave in the morning," she said, her voice cold and steady. "But let me be clear, Charles, you're not just losing me because of your mother. You're losing me because you didn't fight for us." He looked up at her, his eyes filled with regret. "Emma." "No," she cut him off. "You made your choice. Live with it." She turned and walked away, the weight of her heartbreak threatening to crush her with every step. That night, as she lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, she made herself a promise. She would rebuild her life. She would find her own happiness, with or without Charles, and she would never let anyone make her feel unworthy again. Emma stood on the narrow balcony of her new apartment, looking out at the faint outline of the Rocky Mountains in the distance. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of pine and something else, something fresh, like the possibility of a new start. This was Colorado, her new home. Kira, her 5-year-old daughter, twirled around her, clutching a stuffed bear and giggling at nothing in particular. "Mommy, can we paint my room pink?" Kira asked, tugging at Emma's jacket. Emma crouched to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Pink, huh? That's a bold choice. Let's get settled first, okay? Then we'll make it perfect." Inside, the apartment was small but cozy. The kitchen barely fit the second-hand table she had bought from a thrift store, and the living room was more of a nook with a couch that had definitely seen better days, but it was hers. Every corner of the space was a little reminder of her determination to start over. Emma set her coffee mug on the counter and glanced at the clock. It was nearly 7:30, and she had to leave soon. Her first day at the new job had been nerve-wracking, but today was the real challenge. Amelia, her manager, had hinted at a major project coming her way, and Emma wasn't sure if she was excited or terrified, probably both. Emma kept her head high even though her stomach was doing nervous little flips. She stepped into the elevator, clutching her bag tightly as she mentally rehearsed her responses for the meeting. When the doors slid open, the familiar hum of the marketing department greeted her, keyboards clacking, phones ringing, and snippets of conversations about ad campaigns and deadlines filling the air. "Morning, Emma," a cheerful voice called out. It was Leah, the office coordinator, who always seemed to have a cup of tea in one hand and an encouraging smile on her face. "Morning," Emma replied, trying to match Leah's energy. She made her way to her desk, setting down her bag and booting up her computer. She had barely settled in when Amelia appeared, clipboard in hand, her usual no-nonsense expression firmly in place. "Emma, good. I was just about to come find you," Amelia said, her tone brisk but not unkind. She motioned for Emma to follow her. Emma grabbed a notebook and pen, her heart picking up pace as she followed Amelia into the conference room. A few others were already seated, including Mark, the senior account manager, who had a reputation for being difficult, to put it kindly. "All right, everyone," Amelia began, standing at the head of the table. "We've got a big opportunity with Acme Group, and I want us to bring our A game. This is a high-profile client, and they're expecting a detailed pitch by the end of the month." Emma scribbled notes furiously, her mind racing. Acme Group was one of the biggest names in their industry, and landing them as a client could mean huge things for the company and for her career. "Emma," Amelia continued, turning her attention directly to her, "I'd like you to take the lead on this. You'll be working closely with Mark to develop the proposal and oversee the initial campaign strategy." Emma froze for half a second, her pen hovering over the page. She could feel Mark's eyes on her, and she braced herself for the skepticism that was sure to follow. Amelia," Mark said, leaning back in his chair with a smirk, "don't you think it might be a bit much for someone who's just started here?" Emma felt a pang of insecurity but quickly pushed it aside. Amelia didn't hesitate. "No, I don't," she said firmly. "Emma's got the fresh perspective we need for this client, and I trust her to handle it." "That's not up for debate," Mark shrugged, clearly unimpressed, but Emma caught the faintest hint of a smile from Leah, who had joined the meeting as a note-taker. "Emma," Amelia said, her tone softening just a little, "I know this is a big task, but I believe you're capable. You've got the creativity and drive this project needs." Emma nodded, her throat feeling dry. "Thank you, Amelia. I won't let you down." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of timelines and deliverables. When it was over, Emma returned to her desk, her notebook filled with scribbled notes and her mind buzzing with ideas. But as the excitement started to wear off, doubt crept in. Could she really do this? What if she messed up? Leah stopped by her desk on the way back to her own. "Don't let Mark get to you," she said with a wink. "He's always like that." "You'll do great," Emma smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Leah. I needed that." The day flew by as Emma threw herself into the project. She researched Acme Group's history, studied their past campaigns, and brainstormed ideas for the pitch. By the time the office started emptying out, she was still at her desk, her eyes glued to her computer screen. "Burning the midnight oil already?" Amelia's voice broke through her concentration. Emma looked up, startled. "Oh, I just wanted to get a head start. There's so much to do, and I want to make sure I'm on top of everything." Amelia nodded, leaning against the edge of Emma's desk. "That's good," she said, "but don't burn yourself out. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Take it one step at a time." After what felt like a long work days, Emma took Kira for grocery shopping. The supermarket hummed with life. Emma stood in the candy aisle, crouched down at her daughter's level. Lila was holding 2 brightly colored packs of gummies in her tiny hands, her face scrunched up in deep concentration. "Mommy," Lila said seriously, holding up the red pack, "this one has little hearts in it, and hearts mean love. But this one," she raised the green pack, "has dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are way cooler. What do we do?" That's a tough choice. Maybe love and coolness can share the stage. Should we get both?" Lila's eyes lit up, but then she hesitated. "But you said we're only getting one treat today." Emma's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's thoughtfulness. "Well," she said, leaning in conspiratorially, "how about I break my own rule just this once? But only because you've been such a big help today." Lila grinned and hugged Emma tightly before plopping the gummies into the cart. "Thanks, Mommy, you're the best." As they moved down the aisle, Emma couldn't help but laugh at Lila's animated chatter about dinosaurs and hearts. It was these small moments that made the long days worth it, the laughter that reminded her how far she had come. But as they turned into the sauces aisle, Emma's laughter froze in her throat. She felt it before she saw him, a presence that made her stomach tighten. She turned her head slightly, her breath catching when she saw Charles standing at the end of the aisle. He was leaning on his cart, his expression unreadable at first, but as their eyes met, it shifted. Shock, regret, something else she didn't want to name. He looked older, wearier, as if the years had taken their toll. Emma quickly turned back to Lila, her heart pounding in her chest. "Mommy, can we get the honey barbecue sauce? That's my favorite." Lila was oblivious to the tension that had suddenly entered the air. "Sure, sweetheart," Emma said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She grabbed the bottle and placed it in the cart, willing herself not to glance back. But Charles was moving closer now, his footsteps slow, hesitant. Emma could feel his eyes on her, and a wave of memories threatened to overwhelm her. She pushed them aside, focusing on Lila, who was now skipping beside the cart. "Emma." His voice broke through the noise of the supermarket, soft but unmistakable. She froze for a fraction of a second before turning to face him, her expression calm and unreadable. "Charles," she said simply. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His eyes flicked to Lila, who was busy examining a row of spaghetti jars, humming a little tune. He swallowed hard, his gaze returning to Emma. Is she your daughter?" Emma's face softened slightly as she looked at Lila. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "Her name is Lila." Charles's brow furrowed. "But how? I mean, after everything—" Emma met his gaze, her eyes cool. "Not everything is your concern, Charles." The words hung in the air like a barrier between them. Charles flinched slightly, the weight of her calmness hitting him harder than anger ever could. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again, as if unsure where to begin. "I didn't know," he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. "I didn't know that you didn't care to know," Emma interrupted, her tone sharp but not loud. She glanced at Lila, making sure she wasn't paying attention, before lowering her voice. "You made your choice, Charles. You walked away. So whatever you're trying to say now, it doesn't matter." "I was wrong," he said quickly, his voice cracking. "Emma, I know I was wrong. I've thought about it every single day. What I did, what I let happen, it was a mistake. I let my mother—" Emma cut him off again, her eyes flashing with something close to anger. Don't stand here and tell me it was her fault. You're a grown man, Charles. You made your choices and I made mine." She took a breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "I rebuilt my life without you, and I don't owe you anything." Charles looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. His eyes flicked to Lila again, who was now walking back to the cart with a box of pasta in her hands. "She looks so much like you," he said quietly, almost to himself. Emma's chest tightened, but she didn't let it show. "We're done here," she said, turning her back to him and pushing the cart toward the checkout lanes. "Emma, wait," Charles called after her, his voice desperate. She paused for a moment, glancing over her shoulder. "Goodbye, Charles," she said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. As Emma walked away, her heart felt heavy, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She glanced down at Lila, who was happily arranging the items in the cart. "Mommy," Lila said, holding up the box of pasta, "can we make spaghetti tonight?" Emma smiled, reaching down to brush her daughter's cheek. "Spaghetti it is, love." After the dinner, Emma took Kira to bed and read her a bedtime story. "Good night, Mommy," Kira said softly. Emma sat beside her for a while, looking at her innocent face, a small reminder of how this cute, fragile child had brought a change in her life she never expected. 5 years ago, one night, the rain was coming down hard the day Emma walked into the clinic. She clutched her umbrella tightly, though it did little to keep her dry as she hurried inside. Her heart was racing, but it wasn't from the chill in the air. She'd spent weeks researching this place, reading every article, every review, and even reaching out to patients who had been treated there. Now, standing in the sterile white lobby with the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead, the reality of it all hit her. "Emma James," a nurse called, her voice warm but efficient. Emma stood up, smoothing her coat as she followed the nurse into a private consultation room. This wasn't a decision she had come to lightly. "Dr. Patel will be with you shortly," the nurse said, offering a reassuring smile before closing the door behind her. Emma sat down and glanced at the stack of pamphlets on the desk. Advanced fertility fertility options, one read in bold letters. She picked it up, flipping through the pages, though she had already memorized most of the information. Terms like experimental and low success rate had scared her at first, but now they were just facts, challenges she was willing to face. This was her last hope. The door opened and Dr. Patel walked in, her presence calm and commanding. She was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes softened by a warm smile. She sat across from Emma, her hands folded neatly on the desk. "Emma," she began, her tone gentle but direct, "I've reviewed your file. I know you've been through a lot." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I've tried everything else," she said, her voice trembling slightly. This is my last chance." Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. "I want to be honest with you. The procedure we're discussing is still in its early stages. There's no guarantee it will work, but if you're ready to move forward, I believe it's worth trying." Emma nodded again, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "I know the odds, but I have to try. I need to do this for me." The next few weeks were a blur of appointments, tests, and cautious optimism. Emma followed every instruction to the letter, no matter how exhausting or invasive. She refused to let doubt creep in. She wouldn't let herself think about failure. This was her choice, her fight, and she was determined to see it through. The day she got the call was unremarkable at first. She had just gotten home from work, kicking off her shoes and collapsing onto the couch. The phone rang and she answered without checking the caller ID. "Emma?" Dr. Patel's voice was cautious, but there was a glimmer of something in her tone. Emma sat up straight, clutching the phone tightly. "Yes," she said, her heart pounding. "You're pregnant," Dr. Patel said, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Emma's hand flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She couldn't speak, couldn't think. She could only cry as the weight of the moment crashed over her. After years of heartbreak and loss, she had finally been given this gift. "Emma," Dr. Patel said after a moment, "are you all right?" "Yes," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. I'm more than all right. The pregnancy wasn't easy. There were complications and moments of fear when she thought it might all slip away. But Emma held on, drawing strength from the life growing inside her. She talked to her baby every night, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "You're my little fighter," she whispered one night as she lay in bed, "and I promise no matter how tough things get, I'll fight for us. Always." When Lila was finally born, Emma felt like her world had shifted. She held her tiny daughter in her arms, marveling at the delicate features and the way her tiny fingers wrapped around Emma's thumb. She had never known love like this before, a love so fierce it felt like it could move mountains. "You're my miracle," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face as she kissed Lila's forehead. "You're everything I ever dreamed of." Those early days were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes, but Emma didn't mind. Every cry, every yawn, every tiny movement felt like a blessing. She would sit by the crib at night, watching Lila sleep, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Emma had lost so much, but in Kira, she found everything. The next day, Emma's parents visited the house. The smell of freshly baked bread wafted through the air as Emma's mother, Carol, placed a loaf on the kitchen counter, her hands still dusted with flour. Emma sat at the small round table, sipping tea and watching Kira play with a set of mismatched crayons, her drawings scattered across the surface. "So," Carol began, her tone casual but laced with something heavier, "how are things at work, sweetheart?" Emma glanced up from her mug. "Busy as usual," she said, smiling faintly. "But good. I feel like I'm finally finding my rhythm there." Her father, Richard, who had been sitting quietly by the window, reading the newspaper, folded it neatly and set it down. "And at home?" he asked, his voice steady but carrying a weight that immediately put Emma on edge. Emma raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Carol wiped her hands on a dish towel, glancing at Richard before sitting down across from Emma. "You know what we mean," she said gently. "Emma, we're so proud of everything you've accomplished, truly, but we worry about you." Emma set her mug down, bracing herself. "What is there to worry about? Kira and I are doing just fine." Carol sighed, her expression soft but persistent. "It's just you're doing everything alone. raising Kira, working full-time, managing the house. It's a lot for one person, Emma. We just want to make sure you're happy." "I am happy, Mom," Emma said firmly. "It's not easy, sure, but I'm managing, and I have Kira. That's all I need." Richard cleared his throat, leaning forward slightly. "Emma, no one's saying you're not capable. We've seen how hard you've worked to build this life for you and Kira, but wouldn't it be easier if you had someone to share it with, someone to help shoulder the load?" Emma's jaw tightened. "You mean if I got married again?" she said flatly. Carol hesitated. "Well, yes," she admitted. "You're still young, Emma. You have so much to offer, and there are plenty of good men out there who would love to—" "Mom, stop," Emma interrupted, her tone sharper than she intended. "I don't need a man to validate my life or make it easier. I've already been down that road, and it didn't exactly work out." Carol's expression turned pained. "We're not trying to bring up the past, Emma, but Charles, well, he wasn't the right person for you. That doesn't mean no one will be." Emma shook her head, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Do you know what Charles taught me? That the only person I can truly rely on is myself. He walked away the moment things got hard, and I had to pick up the pieces on my own. I'm not putting myself or Kira through that again." Richard leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowed. "Emma, we understand why you're cautious, but not every man is Charles. There are good people out there, people who could bring joy to your life, to Kira's life." Emma glanced at Kira, who was happily humming to herself as she colored in a picture of a son. Her heart softened, but her resolve didn't waver. "I'm not saying I'll never trust anyone again," she said quietly, "but right now, my focus is on Kira. She's my priority. I don't want her to feel like she has to compete for my attention or worry about being left behind." Carol reached across the table, placing a hand over Emma's. "You're a wonderful mother, Emma, truly, and we're so proud of how strong you are. But strength doesn't mean you have to do everything alone." Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I'm not alone, Mom," she said softly. "I have Kira, I have you, and Dad. That's enough for me for now." Richard sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "We just want you to be happy, Em. That's all we want." "I am happy," Emma said firmly, though her voice softened as she looked at her parents. "It might not look like the life you imagined for me, but it's mine, and I'm proud of it." The tension in the room eased slightly as Kira bounced over, holding up her drawing triumphantly. "Look, Grandma, look, Grandpa, I drew a rainbow." Carol's face lit up and she pulled Kira into her lap, showering her with praise. "It's beautiful, darling, just like you." Emma watched the scene unfold. She knew her parents meant well, but they didn't see the world the way she did. They didn't understand what it had taken for her to rebuild, to stand on her own 2 feet, to create a life for herself and Kira from the ground up, and that was okay. The room buzzed with conversation. Emma stood near the buffet table, her glass of sparkling water balanced carefully in one hand while she scrolled through her phone with the other. Networking events weren't her favorite, but they were necessary. She had spent the last hour politely introducing herself to potential clients, nodding through their long-winded stories about market trends and their golf games. She glanced around the room, wondering if it was too early to leave. Her eyes drifted to the grand chandelier above, its crystals catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. It was beautiful, but even that wasn't enough to distract her from the growing ache in her feet. She shifted her weight, scanning the crowd for any familiar faces, though she doubted she'd find one. And then she saw him. At first, it was just a fleeting glance. A tall figure standing near the bar, his profile partially obscured by the man he was speaking to. But there was something about the way he stood, the way he leaned slightly as he listened, that made her pause. And then he turned, laughing at something the other man said, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. Michael. It had been years, but there was no mistaking him. His hair was a little shorter now, streaked with faint hints of gray at the temples, and there was a certain maturity in the way he carried himself. But his smile was the same, warm, easy, the kind of smile that could light up an entire room. Emma felt a strange mix of emotions, surprise, curiosity, a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. She hadn't seen him since high school, when life was simpler and dreams felt closer. Before she could decide whether to approach him or slip out unnoticed, Michael's gaze swept across the room and landed on her. His smile faltered for a moment, replaced by something softer, more uncertain. Then, as if pulled by some invisible force, he started walking toward her. Emma, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief as he stopped a few feet away. Michael, she replied, her lips curving into a small smile. Long time no see. Wow, he said, shaking his head as if trying to process the moment. I can't believe it's you. You look amazing. Emma felt a faint blush rise to her cheeks. Thanks. You look good too, he chuckled, running a hand through his hair. So, what brings you here? Work, I'm guessing. She nodded. Yeah, networking, making connections, the usual. You? Same, he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. I just started working with a new company. They sent me here to mingle, but honestly, I'm terrible at this sort of thing. Emma laughed softly. You? Terrible at mingling? I find that hard to believe. He grinned, the familiar twinkle in his eye making her heart ache with nostalgia. Well, I guess I've gotten a little better at it over the years. Speaking of years, how have you been? It feels like forever. Emma hesitated, sipping her water to buy herself a moment. I've been good, she said finally. Busy, but good. Life's different now. Michael nodded, his expression thoughtful. Yeah, I can imagine. I always wondered how you were doing. I regretted not staying in touch after high school. Emma raised an eyebrow, her tone light but tinged with curiosity. Regretted it, huh? You never seemed like the type to look back, Michael. He laughed softly, his gaze dropping briefly before meeting hers again. Maybe not back then, but, life has a way of humbling you, makes you realize what you took for granted. Emma's chest tightened at his words, but before she could respond, a voice interrupted them. Michael, a woman's voice called, light and cheerful. Emma turned to see a stunning brunette approaching, her sleek black dress fitting perfectly. She placed a hand on Michael's arm, her smile warm, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of curiosity. And who's this? The woman asked, her eyes flicking to Emma. Oh, Michael said, his tone suddenly more cautious. Emma, this is Mia, my girlfriend. Mia, this is Emma, an old friend from high school. Emma felt a pang at the word girlfriend, though she quickly brushed it aside, forcing a polite smile. Nice to meet you, Mia. Mia's smile widened, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Nice to meet you, too. Michael's told me so much about his high school days, but I don't think your name ever came up. Emma's smile tightened slightly. Well, it has been a long time, she said evenly. Michael shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the two women. Mia, I was just catching up with Emma. We were talking about... Actually, Emma said, cutting him off gently, I should probably get going. It's getting late, and I've got an early morning tomorrow. Michael's expression shifted, a flicker of something like disappointment crossing his face. Oh, well, it was really good seeing you, Emma. I hope we can catch up again sometime. Emma nodded, her smile soft but distant. Maybe. Take care, Michael. As she walked away, she could feel both of their eyes on her. Her heart felt heavier than it had when she walked in. But she straightened her shoulders, reminding herself of everything she had built, everything she had to protect. Sometimes the past had a way of sneaking up on you, but Emma knew better than to let it pull her back. She had come too far to look over her shoulder for too long. A few days later, the office cafeteria was unusually busy. Emma stood in line, distractedly scrolling through her phone as she waited to grab her lunch. She was already thinking about the emails piling up on her desk when a voice from behind her broke through her thoughts. Emma James, is that you? She turned, startled, and found herself face to face with Michael. His easy smile and familiar spark in his eyes instantly took her back to high school. Michael, she said, what are you doing here? He held up his company badge, his grin widening. I could ask you the same thing. Turns out we're in the same circle now. Business world smaller than I thought. Emma laughed softly, shaking her head. Small world indeed. How long have you been working with Acme? Couple of months, he said, stepping forward as the line moved. They grabbed their trays and found a quiet table by the window. As they ate, Michael leaned back in his chair, watching her with a mix of curiosity and nostalgia. You know, he said after a moment, I can't believe it's been so long. It feels like just yesterday we were running drills in the gym. You used to sit on the second floor bleachers, always pretending to study, but watching the games instead. Emma raised an eyebrow, smiling. I wasn't pretending, I was studying. I just happened to have a great view of you missing all your free throws. Michael laughed, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Guilty. I was terrible under pressure. You never let me forget it either. That's because someone had to keep you humble, Emma shot back, her smile softening as she sipped her coffee. The conversation flowed easily, and for a little while, it felt like no time had passed. They shared stories, catching up on everything from career changes to embarrassing high school memories, but beneath the laughter, there was an undercurrent of something else. A tension neither of them addressed. "Emma," Michael said suddenly, his voice quieter, more serious. "I've thought about you, over the years. I've wondered how you were doing, what your life turned out like." Emma paused, her fork hovering over her plate. She wasn't sure how to respond, so she settled on the truth. "I've thought about you too," she admitted. "But life, it takes you in directions you don't always expect." Michael nodded, his gaze searching hers. "Yeah, it does." Before either of them could say more, a voice interrupted. "There you are." They both turned to see Mia approaching, carrying a thermos in one hand and a wide smile on her face. "Michael, I thought I'd surprise you," Mia said, setting the thermos down. "I made your favorite soup. You've been working so late, I figured you could use a proper meal." Michael blinked, clearly caught off guard. Thanks, Mia. That's really thoughtful." Mia placed the thermos on the table with a practiced ease and glanced at Emma. Her smile was the same polite one Emma had seen before, but this time there was a touch of something sharper behind it. "I see you two are catching up again," Mia said lightly, her eyes flicking between Michael and Emma. Michael cleared his throat, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Yeah, we were just talking about old times. High school memories." Emma gave a small nod, her smile restrained but friendly. "It's good to see you again, Mia." "You too," Mia replied. "Michael mentioned you've been working together on some projects. Small world, isn't it?" "Very small," Emma said, keeping her tone neutral. Mia turned her attention back to Michael, placing a hand lightly on his shoulder. "Don't forget, we still have dinner with my parents tonight. You promised you'd be there early this time." Michael hesitated for the briefest moment, his gaze flickering toward Emma before he nodded. "Of course, I didn't forget," he said quickly. Emma decided it was the perfect moment to bow out. She picked up her tray and stood, smoothing down her blouse. "I should get back to work anyway," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It was nice seeing you both." Michael looked up, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Yeah, same here. Take care, Emma." "You too," she replied, before turning and walking away. As Emma made her way back to her desk, she felt a heaviness settle in her chest. She told herself it was nothing, just old feelings stirred up by familiar faces and unfinished conversations. Michael was part of her past, and her present was already filled to the brim with responsibilities she couldn't afford to ignore. Still, as she opened her laptop and tried to focus on her work, a small part of her couldn't help but feel like her story with Michael wasn't quite over yet. The notice had come on a Thursday morning, slipped under the door in a plain white envelope. Emma found it when she was rushing to get Kira ready for school, juggling a half-packed lunchbox and a coffee that had already gone cold. She picked it up absent-mindedly, tucking it into her bag to deal with later. It wasn't until that evening, when Kira was asleep, that she opened it. Her stomach sank as she read the words. The landlord was selling the building. She had 30 days to move out. Emma leaned back against the couch, her head resting on the edge as the weight of the news pressed down on her. Where would they go? Rent in the city was sky high, and with her budget already stretched thin, finding a place on such short notice felt impossible. She glanced toward Kira's bedroom, the soft hum of her daughter's nightlight casting a faint glow into the hallway. The thought of uprooting Kira from the home they'd built together made her chest ache. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, apartment viewings, and endless spreadsheets of expenses. Every place she visited seemed to come with a catch, a price she couldn't afford, a commute that would take hours, or a space so small it felt like a closet. She tried to hide her stress from Kira, but even at 5 years old, Kira was perceptive. "Mommy," she said one night, as Emma tucked her into bed, "why are you so sad?" Emma forced a smile, brushing Kira's hair back from her forehead. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just a little tired." Kira frowned, her small hand reaching up to touch Emma's cheek. "You don't have to be tired, I can help." Emma's heart squeezed as she kissed Kira's hand. "You already help more than you know, my love." "Why don't you let Kira stay with us for a little while?" Carol suggested. "It'll give you some time to figure things out without worrying about her being caught in the middle." At first, Emma dismissed it outright. The thought of being apart from Kira was unbearable. But as the days passed and the deadline loomed closer, the idea began to take root. Maybe, just maybe, It was the best option. Kira would be safe, surrounded by love, and Emma could focus on saving for a place where they could start fresh. The night she told Kira was one of the hardest of her life. They were sitting on the couch, a half-eaten bowl of popcorn between them as a cartoon played on the TV. Emma muted the sound and turned to face her daughter. "Kira, sweetheart," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I need to talk to you about something important." Kira tilted her head, her big brown eyes filled with curiosity. "What is it, Mommy?" Emma took a deep breath, reaching for Kira's hand. "You know how I've been really busy lately, looking at new places for us to live?" Kira nodded. "Because Mr. Landlord is selling the house." "That's right," Emma said, her heart twisting at how easily Kira understood. "Well, it's going to take me a little time to find the perfect place for us, and while I'm looking, I was thinking maybe you could stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a little while, just until I figure everything out." Kira's face fell, her hand tightening around Emma's. "But I don't want to go without you." Emma's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I know, sweetheart, and I don't want to be apart from you either. But it'll just be for a little while. You'll have so much fun with Grandma and Grandpa, they'll spoil you like they always do." Kira's lip trembled. "But who's going to read me stories at bedtime?" Emma felt the tears building in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Grandma's really good at reading stories," she said with a small smile, "and we'll talk on the phone every night. You can tell me all about your day, and I'll tell you about mine. It'll be like our own little secret club." Kira looked down, her fingers playing with a loose thread on the couch. "Promise it won't be forever?" Emma pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "I promise. As soon as I find us a new home, we'll be back together. You're my heart, Kira. Nothing could ever keep us apart for long." The next few days were a whirlwind of packing and preparations. Emma tried to keep the mood light, letting Kira choose which toys to bring to her grandparents' house and promising they'd have a big adventure when they were reunited. But when the day came to say goodbye, the reality of it hit harder than Emma expected. At the train station, Kira clung to Emma's leg, her small suitcase by her side. "I don't want to go, Mommy," she said, her voice muffled against Emma's coat. Emma knelt down, cupping Kira's face in her hands. "I know, baby, but this is just for a little while, and then, when we're back together, we'll have the best new home. We'll decorate it however you want. You can even pick the color of your room." "Pink?" Kira asked, her tears slowing. "Bright pink," Emma said, smiling through her own tears. As Carol took Kira's hand and led her toward the platform, Emma stood frozen, watching her daughter walk away. When Kira turned back to wave, Emma waved back, her heart breaking and swelling all at once. As the train pulled away, Emma stood there for a long time, her hand still raised in a wave. The station grew quiet, the platform emptying around her, but she stayed until the train was out of sight. And then, with a deep breath, she turned and walked away, her steps heavy but determined. This wasn't the end, just a temporary goodbye. She would find a way to bring them back together. She always did. The soft glow of a lamp lit Mia's apartment as she moved about, straightening cushions on the couch. Her place was impeccable, but tonight there was a tension in the air that even the perfect decor couldn't hide. Michael sat on the edge of the couch, leaning forward with his elbows resting on his knees. His hands were clasped tightly, and his leg bounced nervously, a tell Mia had come to recognize over the months they'd been together. Something was wrong. She'd felt it growing between them lately, and though she had tried to brush it off, the unease had only deepened. "Michael?" Her voice breaking the silence. "What's going on? You've been quiet all night." He didn't answer right away, his eyes fixed on a spot on the carpet. Finally, he exhaled, sitting up straighter but still avoiding her gaze. "Mia, we need to talk." Her heart sank. She hated those words. Nothing good ever came after "we need to talk." "Okay," she said cautiously, perching on the armrest of a chair across from him. "I'm listening." He glanced up at her, his expression pained. "I care about you," he began, his voice low but steady. "You've been amazing to me. You've supported me. You've been patient when I've been buried in work. I don't know if I've ever told you how much I appreciate that." Mia's chest tightened. She could feel the butt coming, and she braced herself for it. "Michael, if this is about something I've done, it's not about you," he interrupted quickly, shaking his head. "It's not anything you've done. You're incredible, Mia, and that's what makes this so hard." Her eyes searched his face, confusion and fear flickering across her features. "What are you saying?" "I've been trying to figure out how to say this," he admitted, "but the truth is, I haven't been completely honest with you about how I've been feeling." Mia's pulse quickened. Just say it, Michael. Please. He took a deep breath, his words tumbling out in a rush. Seeing Emma again, it brought back things I thought I'd moved past, feelings I thought were gone. But they're not, Mia, they're still there. The room went silent. Mia stared at him, her expression frozen in shock. Emma, she said finally, this is about her. Michael nodded, guilt etched across his face. I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't even know she was in the same city, let alone working with Acme. But when I saw her, it was like everything came rushing back, and I've been trying to ignore it, to push it down, but I can't. It's not fair to you. Mia's eyes filled with tears as she stood up abruptly, crossing her arms over her chest. So that's it, she said, her voice trembling. You see your high school sweetheart at some networking event, and suddenly everything we've built means nothing. That's not what I'm saying, Michael said, standing up as well. Mia, you mean so much to me, but I can't keep pretending my heart isn't somewhere else. It's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me. Fair? She repeated, her voice rising. You're talking about fairness. What about me, Michael? What about the time I've invested in this relationship? What about the plans we've made? Does none of that matter? It does matter, he said desperately. That's why I can't string you along. You deserve someone who can give you everything, someone who's all in. And right now, I can't be that person for you. Mia turned away, swiping at her tears angrily. So what? You're just going to run back to her? To Emma? Michael hesitated, the weight of her words pressing down on him. I don't know what's going to happen with Emma, he admitted, but I know I can't stay in this relationship, not when my feelings are so conflicted. It wouldn't be right. Mia spun around to face him, her eyes blazing. You're a coward, she said, her voice shaking. You're throwing away something real for a fantasy, and when it all falls apart, don't expect me to be here waiting. Michael's shoulders sagged, her words hitting him like a punch to the gut. You have every right to be angry, he said quietly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope someday you'll understand why I had to do this. Mia let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. I don't think I ever will. For a moment they stood there in silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Finally, Michael grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. I'm sorry, Mia, he said one last time, his voice filled with regret. As he walked out the door, Mia sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Her heart ached with the weight of his absence, but deep down, she knew he was already gone long before tonight. It's been days since Kira left. For the first time in 5 years, Emma was having it so hard to make things right. Her mind lingered as she sat in the office cafe. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea, though she hadn't taken more than a sip. The warmth of the cup steadied her, a small comfort amidst the chaos that seemed to engulf her life lately. Across from her, Michael sat quietly, his coffee untouched. He studied her face, noticing the faint shadows under her eyes and the slump of her shoulders. He could tell she was tired, not just physically, but emotionally, and it tore at him. You've been awfully quiet, Michael said, breaking the silence. His tone was gentle, almost teasing, but there was a layer of concern beneath it. Emma glanced up, managing a small, weary smile. Sorry, my brain's just full. I feel like I'm juggling a million things, and none of them are staying in the air. Michael nodded, leaning forward slightly. I get that, he said, his voice soft. So, how can I help? Emma hesitated, her smile fading as her gaze drifted to the window. I sent Kira to stay with my parents, she said finally. Michael blinked, the words taking a moment to register. What? He asked, his tone laced with confusion and concern. You sent her to your parents? Emma, why didn't you tell me? Emma's chest tightened, and she looked down at the table, avoiding his gaze. Because it's not your problem, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It's my responsibility, my burden. I had to make a choice, Michael. The landlord sold our apartment, and I couldn't find anything we could afford in time. I didn't want her to feel that instability, to see me scrambling. So I sent her to my parents, and just until I can figure it out. Michael's heart sank as he watched a tear slip down her cheek. Emma, he said softly, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his. You don't have to carry this alone. You never have to carry it alone. She pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms tightly around herself as if trying to hold herself together. You don't get it, she said, her voice breaking. I can't let her see me fail. She's already been through so much. Losing her dad, moving everything. She's my whole world, Michael. I have to protect her, even if it means being apart for a little while. Michael's chest ached at the sight of her, so vulnerable and raw. Emma, he said, his voice firmer now, why didn't you tell me sooner? You know I'd have been there in a heartbeat. I could have helped, looked for apartments, helped you pack, anything. You don't have to do this all by yourself. Emma shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. Because I don't know how to let someone in, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Every time I've trusted someone, every time I've let myself believe I could lean on someone, it's gone wrong. I can't risk it, not for me and not for her. Michael's heart broke at her words. He reached out again, this time gently brushing a tear from her cheek. Emma, he said softly, his voice full of emotion, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not Charles, and I'm not going to let you down. I want to be here for you, for both of you, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Emma looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none. Michael, I don't know if I can trust myself to believe that, she said quietly. He leaned closer, his gaze steady and unwavering. Then let me prove it to you, he said. Emma, I've spent too much of my life running away from things that scare me, from people who matter. I'm not doing that anymore. You and Kira, you matter, and I'm here, whether it's as your friend, your partner, or just someone to carry the weight with you. The sincerity in his voice brought fresh tears to Emma's eyes, but this time there was something else there too, hope. She let out a shaky laugh, wiping at her cheeks. You're so stubborn, you know that? Michael smiled, the warmth of it filling the space between them. I've been told it's one of my better qualities. Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. Michael reached for his coffee at last, raising it in a small toast. Anytime, Emma, anytime. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm golden glow across the table, Emma felt the smallest weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't all gone, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was walking it alone. The day of the bidding presentation came faster than Emma expected. She found herself in another conference room, this time with representatives from Acme Group seated across the table. Mark was at her side, his presence reassuring, but also a reminder of the stakes. Emma stood at the front of the room, her hands gripping the edge of the podium. She took a deep breath and began her presentation, walking the clients through the proposed campaign. She spoke with a calm confidence she didn't entirely feel, her voice steady, as she highlighted the innovative strategies her team had developed. One of the Acme executives interrupted with a pointed question about projected ROI. Emma hesitated for a split second, her mind racing. Then she met his gaze and answered clearly, backing up her response with data she had memorized late last night. When she finished her presentation, there was a moment of silence. Then the Acme team began to nod, exchanging impressed glances. Mark leaned over and whispered, "You nailed it." By the time Emma returned to her desk later that day, she was physically and emotionally drained, but there was a sense of accomplishment simmering beneath her exhaustion. She had faced the pressure, and she hadn't buckled. The conference room was alive with chatter, the kind of buzz that only came with good news. Emma sat at her usual spot near the middle of the long table, her notebook closed for once. Her hands were clasped in her lap, though her fingers betrayed her nervous energy as they fidgeted slightly. Around her, colleagues exchanged smiles and whispers, their excitement contagious. Manager Amelia stood at the head of the table, her ever-present clipboard tucked under her arm. She was scanning the room, her sharp gaze softening just a bit as she took in the team's collective enthusiasm. "All right, everyone," Amelia began, her voice cutting cleanly through the noise. The room quieted immediately, all eyes on her. "Let's get to the point. I'm sure most of you already know, but I'm thrilled to officially announce that we've secured the Acme Group account." A ripple of applause and cheers filled the room, and Emma felt a rush of relief wash over her. After weeks of late nights, countless revisions, and moments of doubt that had left her questioning everything, it was finally done. They had done it. Amelia raised a hand, signaling for quiet again. "This is a huge win for the company," she continued. "Acme Group is a high-profile client, and this deal not only strengthens our portfolio, but also opens the door for future opportunities at this scale. And while this was a team effort, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the person who led the charge." Emma froze as Amelia's eyes landed squarely on her. "Emma," Amelia said, her tone softer now, but no less commanding. Your dedication, creativity, and ability to think outside the box were instrumental in making this happen. I've seen a lot of people come and go in this department, but it's not every day that someone steps up the way you did. You've proven yourself to be a valuable asset to this team, and we're lucky to have you." The room erupted into applause again, and Emma felt her cheeks flush as she smiled shyly. Her colleagues turned to her, some clapping her on the back, others whispering congratulations. Leah, who sat beside her, grinned and nudged her playfully. "Look at you, star of the show." "Thanks," Emma said, laughing softly. "It was a group effort." "Don't be modest," Leah replied. "We all know you carried this thing." Amelia spoke again, bringing the room's attention back to her. "To celebrate this win, we've arranged a team dinner tonight at LaRue. Drinks and food are on the company, so I expect to see all of you there." There was a collective cheer, and the atmosphere shifted into something lighter, more celebratory. People began gathering their things, ready to wrap up the day and head out for the night. As the room emptied, Amelia approached Emma, her expression warm but professional. "Emma," she said, resting a hand lightly on Emma's shoulder, "I meant every word. You've got something special, and I see big things in your future. Keep this up, and who knows where you'll be in a few years." Emma smiled, the weight of Amelia's praise settling over her in the best possible way. "Thank you, Amelia. That means a lot." "You've earned it," Amelia said simply, before walking away. That evening, the restaurant was buzzing with energy as Emma and her co-workers filled the private dining room. The clinking of glasses and bursts of laughter echoed off the walls, and the table was laden with dishes that looked too beautiful to eat. Emma found herself seated between Leah and Mark, the latter of whom had been one of her toughest critics during the Acme project. He raised his glass to her, a rare smile on his face. "All right, I'll admit it," he said, his tone teasing but genuine. "You proved me wrong. You did good, Emma, really good." Emma chuckled, raising her own glass. "Thanks, Mark. I'll take that as a high compliment coming from you." "To Emma," Leah said suddenly, raising her glass higher, "for proving us all wrong and making us look good in the process." The table erupted into cheers and clinking glasses, and Emma felt a warmth spread through her. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her accomplishment. This wasn't just about the deal or the praise. It was about proving to herself that she could do it, that she was capable, resilient, and worthy of every bit of success she had worked so hard for. As the night wore on, the laughter grew louder, and the team's camaraderie deepened. For Emma, it was more than just a celebration. It was a moment of validation, a reminder that despite the challenges she faced, she was moving forward. When the dinner finally wound down and people began saying their goodbyes, Emma stepped outside into the cool night air. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the stars, a quiet smile on her face. This victory wasn't the end of the road. It was just the beginning. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt ready for whatever came next. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over the small but charming house at the end of the cul-de-sac. Emma stood on the front porch, her hand resting on the cool metal of the doorknob. She turned to Michael, who was standing beside her, holding a box labeled Kira's Toys in his arms. "Well," Emma said, a mix of disbelief and joy in her voice, "this is it, our new home." Michael grinned, shifting the box slightly to free up one hand so he could gesture grandly toward the door. "After you," he said, his tone playful but his eyes full of pride. Emma pushed the door open, the hinges creaking slightly, and stepped inside. The house was still mostly empty, save for a few pieces of furniture she'd managed to move in earlier in the week, but it already felt like home. The walls were painted a soft cream, and the hardwood floors gleamed in the fading light. Emma set her bag down on the counter and turned to face Michael. "It's hard to believe this is really happening," she admitted. "After everything, to finally have a place to call our own." Michael set the box down carefully near the stairs and stepped closer to her. "You earned this, Emma," he said softly. "Every bit of it. You worked so hard to make this happen, and you should be proud of yourself." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I am," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "For Kira, for myself, I'm proud." Just then, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the moment. Emma's face lit up and she hurried to the door, throwing it open just as her parents stepped out of their car. Carol was holding Kira's hand while Richard carried a bag of groceries in one arm. "Mommy!" Kira's voice rang out, clear and bright, as she let go of Carol's hand and ran toward Emma. Emma crouched down, catching Kira in a tight hug. "Oh, baby, I missed you so much," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. She pulled back just enough to look at Kira's face, brushing a strand of hair out of her eyes. "What do you think? This is our new house." Kira's eyes widened as she looked past Emma into the house. "It's so pretty, Mommy. Do I get my own room?" "You do," Emma said with a laugh. "And you get to decorate it however you want, remember? You said pink walls and glitter." Kira nodded enthusiastically. "Pink walls and glitter everywhere." Carol and Richard approached, smiling warmly. "This place is beautiful, Emma," Carol said, looking around appreciatively. "You've done such an amazing job." "Thanks, Mom," Emma said, hugging her mother tightly before turning to her dad. "Dad, you didn't have to bring groceries," Richard chuckled, setting the bag down on the counter. "It's just a few things to get you started, and I wasn't about to show up empty-handed." As the family moved inside, Michael busied himself unloading the boxes from his car. Kira darted around the house, exploring every room and shouting out her discoveries. "Mommy, the kitchen is huge," she yelled from down the hall. Emma laughed, exchanging a look with Michael as he carried in another box. "She's got the energy of 3 kids, he said, shaking his head in amusement. "She's been cooped up in my house for weeks," Carol said. "I think she's just happy to be home." Michael set the box down and leaned against the counter, his expression thoughtful. "It's nice, isn't it? Starting fresh." Emma nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Yeah," she said softly, "it really is." Later that evening, after Kira had finally calmed down enough to eat, the group gathered in the living room. Pizza boxes were spread out on the coffee table, and Kira was perched on Michael's lap, peppering him with questions about how to make her room the sparkliest room ever. "We'll figure it out," Michael said with a laugh, his voice warm and patient. "I think your mom might have some rules about how much glitter you can use, though." "No rules," Kira said firmly, crossing her arms in mock defiance. Emma chuckled, shaking her head. "We'll see about that." As the night wound down and Carol and Richard prepared to leave, Emma walked them to the door, hugging them tightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Carol kissed her on the cheek. "We're so proud of you, Emma. You've built something beautiful here." Richard gave her a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. "And you've got a good man helping you out. Don't let him get away." Emma smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly as she glanced back toward the living room where Michael was helping Kira pick up her crayons. "I won't," she said softly. And when her parents were gone and Kira was tucked into her new bed, Emma and Michael stood in the kitchen, the quiet of the house settling around them. "Thank you for today," Emma said, leaning against the counter. "For everything." Michael stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I meant what I said, Emma. I'm here for you, for Kira, for whatever comes next." Emma looked up at him, her heart full. "This feels good," she admitted, "like we're finally where we're supposed to be." Michael smiled, pulling her into a gentle hug. "That's because we are." And as Emma stood there, wrapped in the warmth of his embrace, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Peace. The late afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the living room, casting a warm golden glow across the freshly unpacked boxes and the new furniture Emma had carefully chosen. Outside in the backyard, Kira was chasing bubbles, her laughter echoing through the open door. The sound was light and joyful, like the kind of music Emma hadn't realized she needed until now. Emma stood by the sliding glass door, her arms loosely folded, watching Kira as she spun in circles, her tiny hands reaching for the shimmering bubbles that floated just out of her grasp. A faint smile tugged at Emma's lips, and for the first time in years, her shoulders felt lighter. Michael walked up behind her, his footsteps soft on the hardwood floor. He placed a mug of tea in her hands, the heat seeping through the ceramic and warming her fingers. "Careful," he said with a small smile. "It's hot." "Thanks," she murmured, her eyes never leaving Kira. She took a sip, the earthy flavor grounding her in the moment. "She's so happy." Michael leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed as he watched Kira blow another stream of bubbles into the air. "She deserves to be," he said simply. "You've given her a home, Emma, a real one. That's not easy to do." Emma's smile faltered for a moment as she turned to look at him. "I didn't do it alone," she said softly. "Not this time." Michael's gaze met hers, steady and full of something she hadn't let herself believe in for so long. You didn't have to, he said, and you won't have to again. Emma let out a small laugh, more out of relief than amusement. It's still strange, you know, letting someone help me, letting myself trust that it's okay to lean on someone else. Michael's expression softened and he stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You've been through a lot, he said. It's not easy to let those walls down, but you did it, and look where you are now. She looked down at the tea in her hands, her thoughts swirling like the steam rising from the mug. It wasn't always easy, she admitted, her voice quiet. There were times I thought I couldn't do it. Times I thought maybe it's better to just stop trying so hard. Michael's hand slid down her arm, his fingers brushing hers. But you didn't stop, he said, his voice firm but kind. You kept going. For Kira, for yourself. And now you're here. That says a lot about who you are, Emma. She swallowed the lump in her throat and set the mug down on the nearby table. Her eyes returned to Kira, who was now lying on the grass, giggling as the last few bubbles popped around her. I've learned something, Emma said after a long pause, her voice steady. No matter how difficult things get, there's always a way forward. It's not always clear and it's almost never easy, but it's there. You just have to keep moving even when it feels impossible. Michael smiled, his gaze warm and unwavering. And you don't have to face it alone anymore, he said gently. Emma turned to him fully, her heart full of gratitude, love, and a quiet kind of peace she hadn't felt in years. No, she said, her voice soft but firm. I don't. They stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as Kira got to her feet and ran toward them, her face flushed with excitement. Mommy, Michael, did you see how many bubbles I caught? She asked breathlessly, her grin wide and infectious. We saw, sweetheart, Emma said, crouching down to wrap her arms around her daughter. You're amazing, Kira beamed, looking up at Michael. Michael, can we play more bubbles tomorrow? Of course, Michael said with a grin. I'll bring the biggest bottle of bubble soap I can find. Kira squealed with delight and darted back outside, her laughter ringing out again. Emma straightened, glancing at Michael with a smile that spoke volumes. She adores you, you know. Well, the feeling's mutual, Michael said, his tone light but sincere, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the backyard in hues of orange and pink. Emma felt something settle in her chest, a sense of completeness she hadn't realized was missing until now. She reached for Michael's hand, lacing her fingers through his, and together they stepped outside to join Kira in the fading light of their new beginning.